You are live. Just going to give it a minute to be on YouTube. Not that I have YouTube up, so I don't know. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Please comment and say hello and let us know that you're here. We've just been chatting a little bit about who has read it before, who was reading it for the first time. So let us know that as well. Is this a new read, a reread, and so on? Obviously, hopefully you all know my amazing co-hosts. So going around the square, I'm going to point in the wrong direction as I always do. We have Chelsea, we have Ash, and nope, I can't do it. We have Ren underneath Chelsea. I'm sorry, I don't know how to. Yeah. There we go. That way.
There you go. Hey.
There we go. Hey. We got there. So before we get into any Hitchhikers, just if you have not already subscribed to everybody here, please do so. Everybody's details should be in the description below, including Ashley, who unfortunately can't make it. She got mixed up in her timings and stuff, but she's also there. So yeah, we already have quite a few comments. So if people don't mind, I might quickly just go through and say hello to everybody. So we have Tracy. Hi, Tracy. Cool Gamer. Hello. And Liz. Hi, Liz. I am having some tom yum soup. Ooh. Yay for soup. I'm sorry you have a cold, though. But thanks for joining us. Hello from London. Hello from Australia and
the US.
In the US. I was trying to figure out where in the US. Like I knew
Arizona, but the States. We're over here.
Arizona.
Yeah.
We're proud. And hello, Ren. Welcome, another Ren. Tracy had never read it before.
No, neither had I.
Same.
Awesome. Quite a few newbies. Abby's not read it before. Hello, Jasper. Made it home from visiting Dad just in time. Woo! Kitties need snack now, or they may eat me instead. That's fair. You should go and feed the kitties. I just had a cat sitting next to me who was chewing on my fingers, who has been fed this morning. So I understand. So we were just talking about who had read it and who hadn't. So we might, if everyone's happy to do that, we might go around the circle and say, I guess, around the square, and say, I guess, if you've read it before, or if it was a reread, and I guess what made you interested in reading along with us. And then we might get everyone to make those comments as well, why you kind of picked, why you thought it would be fun to read these books. Who wants to go first? All right, I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first. You were already talking.
I'm already talking.
Yeah.
So this is a reread for me of like a millionth reread for me. I have read all of the books except for the one by Owen Colfer, which is the one that we may or may not do, depending on how everyone's feeling. So I've read all of the books at least once. I've read because it was originally a trilogy in 4 parts. So I've read the 4 parts multiple times. I've only read the 5th part once or twice.
Ren looks so confused about the trilogy in 4 parts.
Yeah. It was always a trilogy.
That
there was always how it was. I don't know if it's again to do, I think, with the way that it was originally conceived, because it was, for those who don't know, it was originally written as a radio play for the BBC, and then it was transcribed into books. So actually, I was reading in my big bind up of the whole lot, the original 4. So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Life, the Universe and Everything, and Thanks for So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. They were the original 4 books, and they were. I think he'd written the first book as the radio play, and had been performed as the radio play. And then he was contracted by the publishers to write a book version. And then he wrote, but I think the restaurant at the end of the universe was also in the radio play, but it was like just the restaurant itself rather than the book. And so he had to flesh out a lot of stuff for the Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy. And then I think it went Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a radio play, and a little bit of Restaurant at the End of the Universe was in the radio play, but then they got transferred into 2 books, and then he got contracted to write 2 more books, so he wrote 2 more books. The trilogy was always a joke because, you know, like that's the kind of humor Douglas Adams likes. And then I think that got turned into the radio play. And then there have been TV shows and movies. And so anyway, yes. So I have read the first 4 multiple times because my parents loved them. And so it was kind of one of those things that were on my shelf. And, you know, when you're like 14 and you're like, oh, what am I going to read next? Yeah. So that's me.
Okay. I guess I'll go next since I know I'm also somebody that has reread some, or at least this is going to be my reread for some. I read the first 2 books in either 2020 or 2021, so it was relatively recent. And I just never continued on with the series, even though I knew I wanted to. So when we decided to do this, I was like, obviously this is perfect. I definitely want to do this. And the reason I started reading these is because I love the movie so much. Like I was telling them right before we started the live part, is like I literally have watched the movie before I read the book at least 10 times. Like I know so much about the movie. I think I had a crush on Martin Freeman at some point. You know, like I watched it so many times. And so it was just a fun sort of thing to like, let's read the books now, since I knew we also had that part. And so, yeah, this was my first time rereading it. I really wanted to listen to it on audiobook because I feel like this is a good book for audio. I still have a hold-in at my library for the audio. I put it in December. I'm still like waiting. So I did not get to read it as an audiobook, but I think that would be fun. So I also have the second book on hold, and we'll see if I get that in time for the next time we do this.
I wonder if, I don't even know if you can still get a hold of the radio play. That'd be really fun too.
They have a different version on audio, and I think it might be the radio play. I would have to look into it more, but I wanted the actual audio. So like the first book on audio, at least through my library through Libby, is Stephen Fry narrating, which I think would be great. Book 2 through book 5, I think, is actually Martin Freeman narrating, which would also be great. But I just think it would be a really good experience. But like I said, I placed it in December. I was like 34th in line with 10 copies of the audiobook, and I'm number 4 in line right now. Like people are just taking forever to listen to a 6-hour audiobook. I'm just like, I could read this double speed. Come on, guys. Obviously not everybody's going to do that, but.
Well, I can't talk about how long it takes. I read Happy Place over like 2.5 months, and it's a bit of a longer one, but still. Anyway. Ash, did you want to, or Ren?
Yeah. Oh, I'll go.
Ash can go.
All right, so this is my first time reading it as well. Like Chelsea, I'd love the movie. I think I'd watched it probably more than 10 times. But I just loved how goofy it was. Yeah, I had no idea it was actually more books than one. I thought, oh yeah, it's just a single book thing. And then when Meloness, I thought, perfect. We'll see how it compares to the film. So it was quite interesting to read that from someone who's only seen the film version of it. So it's definitely interesting to see what they changed.
Yeah, cool. It's always fun to do a comparison.
Yeah.
What about you, Ren?
So this whole thing kind of started because I was going to unhaul the Hitchhikers books. I had like the whole series, and because I had just randomly found them at like my local op shop, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that everyone likes, so I'll pick it up. Again, I only thought it was one book, and I just saw the one book and I picked that up. And then the guy that was working at the op shop, he was like, oh, do you want the rest? was like, what do you mean? And he was like, oh, you poor child, here is the rest of the books. I was like, okay. So I got them all. I hadn't read them. Max saw the cover of that first book on my shelves and he was like, this is like gold for people that collect like classic sci-fis, because he's very much he's a sci-fi guy, but he's also like a collectible. He knows what is good in sci-fi. So he was like, protect this book. And I was just like throwing it on my shelf. And I was like, you know what? You will appreciate these editions more than I ever will. So like I gave them to him, and I think he gave them to his mum, who's like more of a, I don't want to say sci-fi snob, but like, they're very precious about their sci-fi. And then Mel, you were like, oh my God, these are like some of my favorite books. Like you really should read them. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And so then like this whole thing came about and we went to read them. And I actually did get the audio. I got it on Spotify.
Ooh.
So potentially look that up, because I think the rest are on there as well. I've got the second one ready to go.
I wonder
as
if
well.
it's
And I think
like
it was Stephen Fry too.
different though for different countries on Spotify. I know like the library stuff is different for different states
Yeah.
here. So I'll look it up for sure. But you guys are all somewhere else that might have better stuff than me.
What? How could it be? Sorry, I'm just letting the cat out because Rowan shut the door because I was being loud. And then Shade was like, no, I'm trapped. Are you going out? No, you don't actually want to go out. Okay.
Oh, see, that's a cat right there. Yeah. Do you want to go out? No, not really. Okay.
I don't want to go out. I just don't want the door to be shut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are no barriers in this house to me. There's a few people talking in the comments about why they wanted to read it. So Tracy said that reading it for a long time. So when you announced the read along, I thought it was the perfect time. I'm so glad. That seems to be a few people who were like, well, I've been meaning to get to this. Yay.
Because it is kind of one of those like classic series
that
everyone reads. So it's like, everyone should read this.
Yeah, and it's not like necessarily everyone's going to think it was the best thing ever, but like it's kind of one of those things that a lot of stuff that came after it has been influenced by it. So you kind of you don't need to read it to enjoy other sci-fi, obviously, but like it definitely helps. And also a lot of jokes, like a lot of people, I don't know if they do still, because I'm a little bit older than a lot of people, but like, if anyone's talking about like the universe and life and rah 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 and what's going on, and if that's the whole, like there used to be a thing when I was younger where like that was just what you'd say, like the answer's 42, obviously, so it's kind of nice to get.
Make sure you bring your towel. Yeah,
exactly.
We still have that a little bit.
42 thing was the only thing I ever heard about this. Like people would just say 42 randomly, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
What is
but
42?
You heard about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that's like sort of seeped into, like, well, I guess English particularly influenced culture that's like seeped in, and you don't even realize that it's what it is or why you're referencing it, which is what Ren is now saying. I've heard of references my entire life and it sounded like something I'd love, so this was a brilliant excuse. Yay! I've owned the box since 2021, but classics of any genre intimidate me. So I've put them off, so joining Readalong forces me to go over my intimidation. Oh, yay, that's awesome.
So true.
I read it at least 30 years ago, meant to reread, but haven't got to it. I haven't seen the movie. Oh, I don't think Ren's seen the movie either. Is that what you said before?
No, yeah. I always kind of wanted to because Martin Freeman. But
I mean, come on.
Need to say more.
But like me and humor, like I have to be in the right kind of mood for humor, and I very rarely am, because sometimes it's just like it's too cringy and I can't take it. So I was worried that might be that, but like I should trust Martin Freeman, honestly.
Well, it is also a little bit more adventure filled, it seems like, than just the books sometimes, and I think it's because they seem to put multiple books together. So I think it'd be a fun one maybe to do after we read all the books and
that'd be
like a movie night or something.
Let us know if that's something people are interested in, but I'd definitely be interested. I think I've only seen the movie like once or twice. Because there was a really terrible 80s movie.
Oh,
like
really?
in the 80s, a really terrible one. And so it was a bit one of those things when the 2005 Martin Freeman came out, it was a bit kind of like, oh, can they really? Again, you know, I was 25, so I was probably a lot more in. I'd read the book multiple times and and I guess, yeah. Whereas you guys are probably a bit younger. And but
Yeah,
yeah,
I was like 15 and I was obsessed.
but I was a bit kind of like, oh, I don't know.
Or not 15. Yeah, 15. 2005. Yeah. I don't even know how old I am anymore, guys. So I just had a birthday. I don't remember.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It was last week.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to read it too. Aw, Tracy went and bought the box set. That's so cute.
Oh, yay.
Cute.
I've heard references forever. High school math teacher loved the answer 42. Yep. Then I heard about it a few years ago from the philosophy people. So when on my TBR, then I saw this and was like, why not? Awesome.
Nice.
And it's in the movie, but plan to. I'm the same, Ren. I do love Martin Freeman. Yeah, he's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
I assume everyone's seen The Office.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
that's the best version for me, the BBC.
Yeah, definitely. So oh man, guys, I was old in 2015. Same.
It was 2005 though, right? Or was it?
It was 2005. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what.
So not
that's
as
what
old,
my Google said.
Right.
Not old, as old.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds right because I'm pretty sure I was very like obsessed as a teenager. Yeah.
I can understand.
I think I was 11.
Oh my god, I feel so old now.
But see, this is one of those things that I really like about booktube stuff is I gravitate towards people who are usually closer to my age or a little bit older. Like it does seem like there's a lot of younger people, but I really like being able to see like the wide age range of people that love books and like want to talk about it. So like that was part of the reason I started following you back in the day because it's been a while now, it feels like. And it's just because of that sort of like, you know, like the differences, but like at the same time, like we all love the same sort of stuff. So
yeah. And it also means that like you hear about different things because different people have had different. Obviously, I've read the books multiple times, or so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was 24 in 2015, so.
You're 24 in 2015. Yeah. So you're
I'll
like
be 23 in March.
Yeah, I just turned 34.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even tell you.
That's okay. you can be 34 too, honorably, if you want.
Yeah, I've been 34 for a little while, but that's okay. I also use an excuse to buy books. Oh, nice.
Any excuse to buy books. I mean, come on.
Exactly, right? I was 8. Wow. No worries, I think I have 15 years on you. Yes. It's so dumb. Like, I don't actually care that I'm in my 40s. Like, that's fine. That's just how old I am, you know? But
yeah.
It was when Becca from Becca and the Books was doing a TBR. Like, this was probably a year ago now. Was doing a TBR and she was talking about historical fiction and she picked up a book that was set in the 80s and was like, this was before I was born, so this is historical fiction. And I was like, oh my god.
Wow.
And see, I'm just over here like, so was it
written
in the 80s or set in the 80s? Because I'm just like one of those people that like sometimes people will be like, oh, this is historical fiction, but it's like, no, that's just an old book. It was contemporary when it was written.
I actually am not sure. I can't remember, but I think it might have been that it was written in the 80s because I think I had a similar reaction.
I'm sure she actually would hopefully know like the actual term for it because like I do watch her and like that kind of stuff too. But I'm just like, I've seen people do that. We're like, oh, this is historical, and it's like, well, just because
it was contemporary
back then.
It's not someone in a different time period writing about.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between someone writing a like Regency novel now and like Jane Austen.
Yeah.
But no, I think she was just doing it because it was like it came up as a prompt. So she was like, well, this is the book I
Yeah.
wanted to read. And it was said, I don't think she was actually being kind of, you know, it was just
Don't
more
expect
that
it that way.
I
No, I completely understand. Anything that was set in the 80s was before my time too.
yeah, but I was like, no, I'm historical. I turned 60 this spring, so just always invite me to your lives. Yay! Thanks, Liz. I'm 54 in March. Oh, really? I thought you were only a little bit older than me. Not that it matters. Anyway, I thought you were only like 2 or 3 years older than me. Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. Well, happy birthday for March, lovely people. I am also birthday in March.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you did say that. Woohoo! March birthday. We should have a March birthday party. I can't think of anything after 1950 as historical. That's fair. That's
True.
definitely fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I sort of feel that way too. Particularly if it was written in the 50s. If it was written now about the 50s, then again, I would probably, like, if it was written now about the 90s, I'd still say it was historical because it's not written contemporary to the time. But, like, in terms of the type of fiction that's specifically being written, not in terms of, like...
Well, I think it's the same with like, people that are like, ooh, I have vintage clothes or whatever it is nowadays. And it's like, that was literally from 2000. And I'm like, what?
How is that?
I had that. Yeah. I think everything just moves and you're just, like, not prepared for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess now is the time to ask what everyone thought of the books. Did we enjoy it? Or the book, I should say.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one. I just lumped them all together in my head. They're all the one.
Oh,
yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah. But yeah, what did everyone think of the book? I know it's like Ren's already said, it's one of Mel's favorite books forever. I won't be offended if your answer is meh.
I gave it
let you know.
4 stars.
Woo! That's very
And
respectful.
I think that was the same rating I gave it the very first time I read it as well. And obviously it's colored by the fact that I have watched the movie so much. So I think some of it is that it is different than the movie. And I try not to compare it, but I do. And I think also part of the reason I was curious about getting it on audiobook is I do find that some of the parts, like, I do find it very humorous. And I love this sort of like satire, dry humor that it does have. But every so often I'll be reading something and my brain can't really wrap around like what that sentence said or something. And so while I did enjoy it and I have both times, there's something about it that just I can't quite give it a 5-star because there's just certain parts where I'm just like, what did we say here?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair. What about Ash and Ren?
Ash, you go.
So I gave it 3.5. I think, like Chelsea, I compared it a bit too much to the film because I've seen that film so many times. Yeah, there's a certain character that I liked in the movie more than the book. I think I did mention it in the Discord. We'll probably get to that. Yeah, there were some things they changed, but I read this like right at the beginning of the month, so it's probably been pushed back to the back of my mind. But for what it was, I enjoyed it.
Cool. Ren.
So, I ended up giving it 3 stars.
Okay.
I was talking about it with Max because at the time I was talking to him about it, I'd only read the first like 10 chapters and I hadn't gone past that in like 2 weeks. And because I was like, I'm not enjoying this. I don't understand this. And he was like, yeah, because you like answers. Because everything that, like, even in like TV shows and movies that we watch together, I'm like, but that doesn't make sense because of this thing that happened here. And like, and you know, why are they doing this when it's this and this? And he's just like, shut up and watch it. And so that's kind of what was happening with the books. I was like, none of this is making sense. Like, why are they doing this? And how does this relate to this? But I was never going to get the answers. And so I just like, I wasn't having the best of time. But then I like binge listened to the rest of it yesterday because I was like, oh my god, the live show's tomorrow. And I actually ended up enjoying it a lot more, and I think it was because we finally met Marvin, the robot.
I love
Yeah.
him.
And I was like, yes, okay, I'm here for this. Love this. And then I think at that point I had just accepted that I'm not going to get answers. And I was like, okay, if I stop expecting things to make sense, I could enjoy it more. So it did get better for me. And like, I have no idea what anything was happening, but it was good.
Well, I mean, they have the infinite improbability drive, and I think when that fully gets into the groove of the book, like when they bring that in, it literally makes everything just so random that you sort of just have to accept
Mm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally would also like more answers with a lot of this stuff, but I think it's just a lot of it is you don't get it, but once you really get you accept that, it's
Mm.
better.
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder how much of that is because, like we said, it was originally sequential radio. Like as the radio play, it wasn't even just the one radio play. It was like different episodes each week. So I wonder, and then also the fact that he was then contracted to write the books and added extra stuff that wasn't like, because there's been so many different iterations. I wonder if partly that's why. But I think also, particularly the first Hitchhikers, Douglas Adams was so focused on humor. I think that's the main thing in that it kind of doesn't start to make plot sense until a bit later. He starts to realize that he needs to actually have a plot and not just a bunch of funny anecdotes kind of thing. Yeah. And I feel like some of his other stuff, like the Dirk Gently books, I feel like they have a lot more plot. Like it's still very much kind of the very dry British, sarcastic British humor.
See, I want to read those because I've seen the TV show.
It's very different.
I'm going backwards, but you know.
That's okay. You're allowed.
I'm like, I'm going to watch all his stuff first and then we'll read all this stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. It's very different from the TV show.
I've heard.
Yeah.
TV show is
the TV show is great, but like you have to kind of like it's the same kind of humor, I guess, and the same kind of characterization, but like the actual plot is completely different. But what did other people?
Yes, let's see.
Oh, this is about historical. My little sister and I were taught 9/11 in history class. That's my bar. I was in the oldest class where most of us had no personal memory of it. Yep.
See, I remember that. Then again, I was in the States, and that was one of those things. I don't know how it was for you all, but like I was in 6th grade, and literally the TV was on the news just all day. Like we were still in class, but it was just on TV all day. I think it started like right before we went to school, and then we were in school, and it was just here is a TV in the corner of your classroom the whole day.
Yeah, it was the same here. Like it was on the news pretty much 24/7. And that when it first came through, I think we were at uni. I think we were in like first year of uni or second year of uni, and I was living in a flat share kind of situation. And yeah, it must have been like one, because you stay up till like 2 a.m. for no reason when you're at uni. I think it was like came through at like 2 a.m. or something, and I don't think we slept, and we were just like, oh my God. And like that was my partner and I, and then other people had already gone to bed, and then they got up in the morning and we're like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, well, World War III is about to start. So
everybody did think that for so long too. Yeah.
We just expected the States to just their reaction to just be like full on.
And I mean, we did have a huge ass war after that, but
wasn't quite
what you thought it would be.
Exactly. Kind of expected it to be like an immediate, basically World War III. Yeah. Fortunately, you're a bit more measured than that.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the books. Evelyn gave it 4 stars. 4 stars from Ren. Really surprised by how well the humor stood up. Yes, I think we should talk about that, the humor, in a minute. 5 stars. Woohoo! I thought it was amazing. That's awesome. I approve. 3.75, which is a good rating for me. I thought it was fun. I love the satire elements that use the absurdity of space to mirror the real world back to the reader. Absolutely. I think you made a few comments like that in the Discord Gemstone Jasper. Sorry, I'm assuming your name is Jasper, so I hope that's okay that I called you that. Yeah, so that was really cool. I was sorry I hadn't been. I wanted to jump on that, but this last few weeks has been insane, so I didn't quite get a chance. But yeah, that was a really good point. I thought that was fun. Tracy started out enjoying it. Started reminding me of Gulliver's Travels and the writing style, and I hated that book. I went to a slump for a couple of weeks. Oh no! I did enjoy it towards the end. I've never read Gulliver's Travels either.
I haven't either.
I've heard
I'm not. Yeah.
I've seen a movie or something, but yeah.
I haven't done that either. I'm not a big classics person, so it's always interesting to me when people consider like something like this classic, because in my mind, like Jane Austen, like Charles Dickens, like that's classic, because I really, my brain doesn't like that sort of writing style and like the language that's used. Like I just can't, I cannot do it. So something like this that feels very much more contemporary, but it's still like a sci-fi classic. My brain's like, no, it's not. It's not classic. It is, but
it is.
It is.
It's like you said, it's a classic of sci-fi. Like you wouldn't, call it a classic in the same way as an Austen. Kind of like how Lord of the Rings is a classic of fantasy. Although that's
and again, it's the same thing. Like I've read that so many times that I'm like, no, it's not. It is.
But it is different. I mean, like technically, can't remember that. I can't think of the name of the book. That's terrible. Margaret Atwood.
Handmaid's Tale?
Handmaid's Tale is technically a modern classic, but like, I wouldn't like. It's not the same as like a Dickens or an Austen. But even then, I mean, you can't compare Dickens and Austen, really. Can
no, I'm sure that my brain says classics or anything that my high school teachers tried to make me read, and so I have said no, I'm not doing that anymore. And so anything that I chose for myself is okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Marvin was the best and must be protected at all costs. Definitely. The robot was great.
So true. It was amazing.
Yes, definitely. I think it's the kind of book that I enjoyed more to reread because I was also expecting answers.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering with you two that had reread it. Like, obviously you've reread it a few times, but like each reread, did you like understand it more or get more out of it?
For me, I forgot a lot of the stuff that wasn't also in the movie. I was like, oh, where are we going again? If it was in the movie, I was like, oh yes, I know exactly where we're going. And then it would bring in some other stuff that obviously didn't make it in. And I didn't remember reading that, even though I know I've read this before. I will be very curious about reading the second book again, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, because of the fact that that one's pretty much not in the movie at all. And so I feel like I wasn't able to compare it as much, whereas this one I did. And so rereading that one, I think, will be a very good tell that way, just because I think my experience, even rereading it, was still very much like I know what happened for a lot of it because I watched the movie.
Yeah.
So like I was still comparing it, even though I shouldn't have.
That's fine. We're influenced by why we bring different things to books every time we read it.
And I gave it the same rating both times, so I don't think it like impacted good or bad for a reread. Like it was, I had the exact same rating both times.
So you enjoyed it as much, like it had the same impact?
I think so. Yeah. So I'll be curious about the next one.
I feel like, I think because I have read them so many times and like it's been a good, like probably 30 years that I've read them over different time periods of my life and stuff. I kind of can't, like I said before, I can't really separate the first four anyway from each other. So to me, they're all one book. And it was actually kind of difficult. I mean, I could have done it, but it was actually kind of difficult to stop and be like, okay, especially because I had the bind up. So it's like literally the one book. Because to me, they just all blend in together. So I kind of feel like I'm reading the first one, knowing what's coming later in other things. And like kind of there's some stuff that kind of gets referenced again later. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So
I do like that stuff on reread where you're able to like pull out different pieces that then connect to later stuff.
Yeah.
I really like that part about rereading.
And of course, I love the mice. That's just classic, like
That was
classic
so
British
funny.
sci-fi, like absurdity kind of. I think that there's a particular like Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams, Monty Python. Like there's a particular British style of humor that's that very kind of absurdist. That just really, because I think I grew up reading this and then watching my parents love Monty Python and stuff. It just kind of like speaks to me. That's why I love Terry Pratchett as well, because it's the same kind of like Jasper was saying before. It's like using this absurdist concept to kind of talk about our world and show the absurdity of the world we live in, but like not to bash it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
When I like that they do it as like this is a fact, like it's not like it's the way that they do the humor and like the absurdity is that like it literally is just like taken for granted, like, oh, humans are the third highest intelligence in the universe, and it's just like, so, and then like later on they're like, oh hey, dolphins are this, but there's another one, and it's just like that was just like that's what it is, like you can't question us, the mice are smarter. Yeah.
And I like that having Arthur Dent as the foil of that, as being like, what? But I'm a human. Like, kind of, you feel like you are Arthur Dent and you're looking at it going, oh. Yeah. I don't remember a lot about 9/11, except it was my dad's birthday and we didn't make him a cake, but went to the American Embassy to put down flowers. Oh, poor dad. I won't rate since I read so long ago, but I did like it. Nice. Is a robot voiced by Alan Rickman in the movie?
Oh, he is. He is.
Yes, he was. Yes, he did.
Not imagining it. It's good. Yes.
Right.
That's why Ash loves. That's why Ash loves Marvin, I imagine.
It's one of the few reasons. Yes.
Yeah. One of the many. My favorite sci-fi classic author is Octavia E. Butler. A lot of websites don't list her books as classics, but I call them modern classics. Definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
I like the mice, but I think it would be more realistic if cats had set up everything. Yes. See, but that's what I like though about the absurdity is that like as if it would be mice.
Yeah, the fact that we're running experiments on them, but it's
actually
them running experiments on us. Like it's great. Yeah.
I loved that scene of like this slow realization as he's talking about, no, we're the ones that experiment on mice.
Yeah. I think I've realized I don't like absurdity in books. That's fair. I think it is a very specific taste. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that like, because they're so focused on the humor, and using the humor to like explore concept about the world. It's like I was saying before, I don't think the plot doesn't come in until a bit later. Like he realized, oh, I need an actual plot. I think it's harder to like these books. Definitely. Oh, don't feel like that, Tracy. No. You're not dumb.
No, but I definitely understand that just because of the fact that like I think that's part of it is why I couldn't give it a 5 stars. It's like some of it definitely relates to now or like when the book was written and like humanity and like there is that parallel that you can definitely see, and then other parts of it is just there to be there, and I'm like I didn't understand why or what, and so that's the part that it does sort of make you feel like, did I just not get that, or is that like does everybody else understand and I just don't? Or
yeah, I do think that's probably also, like you said, partly to do with the way that it's been, like that it's from the 80s. So, you know, they're talking about things that we just don't live in anymore. But I guess also, like we were saying as well, that it's from, like it had so many different versions. It's kind of, I think, one of those things it's a bit hard to translate directly from one thing to another thing to another thing to, like by the time we get to the 2005 movie, it's like so many versions. It's kind of like, oh. So I'm interested in you, Chelsea, going backwards from the movie, because to me the movie is like the most modern, like it's the most modern thing. So it's kind of like, oh, it's the most recent thing to go backwards from that. I don't know.
I think they
that
took a lot of
tense-
stuff and put it into the movie that did make sense, or at least they tried to make it make sense a little bit more for some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it is absurd, and it has like the infinite improbability drive and all this kind of stuff, and like they had the bowl of petunias and the whale, and like they have certain things that are very weird, but
Mm.
because you get to watch it, I don't know, like I feel like some of it was more digestible
Yeah.
for me personally in that way. And I
Yeah.
did like watching it before reading, because then at least those parts I understood exactly what was trying to be said.
Yeah. And I guess
Yeah.
also like it doesn't, like, thinking about the structure of a book, like it doesn't make sense the way that he just sort of stops the story to like go into this deep dive into what the whale would be thinking, when the whale is like, it's a few pages and then you don't talk about the whale again.
Poor Ren.
Like, oh,
I
Somebody
felt
who didn't
so
know about the
bad
whale
for
before.
the whale.
I know the whale.
I feel like it's sadder in
Why?
the movie too, actually. Like, you get to
Yeah.
watch it instead of just, I mean,
Yeah,
okay,
actually, what's happening?
you don't get, there's no like ground. It's just the noise. But like, yeah,
Yeah.
that part was sad.
I don't want the noise. Just why couldn't the whale just like fly away or something?
Yeah.
It's the whale. I do love the petunias saying, "Oh, not again." Like,
Yeah. What on earth happened to those poor petunias previously? That's okay. I hope you feel better. And thank you for joining. And yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll let you know when the next live show is. We'll put it in the Discord. Hope you feel better, poor thing, if you're even still there.
Yeah.
Arthur definitely reacted a lot calmer than I would in that situation. I think Arthur's just so confused that he like doesn't know how to react. Plus, Ford, gets him drunk. So, like,
and plus, it took him forever to realize his own house is going to be bulldozed.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it takes him a while to wake up in the mornings.
Yeah, it's kind of that whole thing of him walking around the house and there's like yellow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yellow. And he's like, what? I loved the whole thing just with how he's like talking to, the comparison between he's talking to the people who are about to bulldoze his house and like they were going, you could have done something about it. The planning was up here. And then the whole thing with the Volgons who are like, stupid planet, like don't even get involved in the galaxy affairs and
it's been in the Andromeda galaxy for how long? What, you've never been to Andromeda? Well, too bad. Like,
you could have found out.
You could have done it. You had 50 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, this one's down.
It's your fault.
Your own fault. Yeah.
No, I love that parallel a lot.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I think that he does really well. Is that
sets it up for the bigger, yeah.
I think I said this in the Discord, but I don't know how a book can make no sense at all, but I also have so much to say. That's the beauty of Douglas Adams. I love the main philosophy of just don't panic. Yes, it's great advice. Even if you're about to be released into the vacuum of space, don't panic. Yeah, make sure you've got your towel and just don't panic. I also love that Ford was on Earth for 15 years, and the only thing he thought to say was harmless, and then mostly harmless. The upgrade was mostly harmless, and I love Arthur's like complete and utter like anger.
That's
about
all
that.
we get. The planet's not there anymore.
And all we have, I definitely got lost a couple of times, and I'm such a I'm sure I'll get it again soon type person. It doesn't bother me too much. That's good. Because you definitely do need that. You need to suspend a lot of disbelief, I think, with people. I forgot about the whale. How can you forget about the whale?
Oh no.
So sad.
Oh, poor Ren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for being a book that does have so much humor, not even just this book, but like when you get into at least the second book, because I haven't continued past the second book, there are some moments that are like that where you're just like, it hits a little bit harder and it's not quite as humorous. And you're like, oh, okay.
There's
There's something that I do remember about book 2 that I'm curious to see how my reread will be, because I just remember like almost that whole like figuring out about the whale, like this is a thing that's happening, and it's like, oh, okay, we went there.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
every
But
so often it's not as humorous.
yeah, there's a bit in the second book that
I'm sure you
very
probably
curious.
know. Yeah.
I'm
curious
very
to see how
curious
everybody
see.
will.
Yeah. Because it's like, that's not kind of that funny, but also that's kind of
Mhm.
hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Bryn's like, I don't even know what you
Well,
people are
now I'm
talking about.
concerned.
Well, it's like we can't even say anything about it, but like it is very like I think most people will have at least some reaction to that part, and I am curious about it, and I'm curious how I'll think about it again, because it is supposed to be humorous, but at the same time it's very like real.
Yeah.
Like it has a very good commentary about like society and humans on Earth and like stuff. Yeah.
And the way we interact with
Yes.
other people and other
Yeah.
creatures and
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is there more
concerned
animal
now.
death?
Oh, it's okay, guys. It's okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, should
we
we?
didn't mean to scare you. Should
Yeah.
we just tell you? Do you want
No,
to just
I don't think we should tell. But if
No.
people need a trigger warning or something, maybe in the Discord, we could always
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
'Cause I do feel like there might be some people that might need something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we can do that.
We can do that.
Yeah. Definitely. So I kind of feel like I've come to the end of all the things that I specifically was wondering about what people thought. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to bring up?
Well, I know Ash had mentioned also talking about characters that were different from the movie and the book. And so if we wanted to talk about that.
I'm like, oh, can I just punch you now, please?
Who is that?
Zaphod.
Oh, yeah.
I don't actually mind him in the movie because
Sam Rockwell does a great job in the movie.
He does. I'm like, oh, I like Sam Rockwell so much better than I like the book version because holy shit, do I want to punch him? I'm like, shut up.
Yeah. I don't think Zaphod is meant to be, or in the book anyway, is meant to be a particularly likable character.
Well, and I'm very curious because they mention near the end of the book that like he's missing certain memories or something in his brain, and book 2 does not give us any information about that. So like I still don't know what that is going to be, and it's not handled the same way in the movie either. So like I'm very, very curious, like what does this actually mean for the story? What does this mean for his character? Because that's a mystery we still have. So
it's interesting what he does with that, and with the whole thing about Zaphod being the president, but like kind of as a figurehead, and like,
I mean that's definitely what I would say the president is.
But he talks about that a bit more in later books as well. I think the next book is probably a similar again, just to again warn people, like similar again in that it's not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily get into the plot in the second book as much either. Like the plot picks up, I think, more in the third and
I feel like
fourth.
it's like the epitome of second book syndrome. Like that's why it's not in the movie like at all. It's like, and I haven't even started the third one, so I don't even know like when we get back on track, but I feel like it was very much a like they got to the end of book 1, they're like, let's go to the restaurant, and like so the book 2 is literally let's go eat at the restaurant, and then eventually they'll get back onto whatever it's supposed to be. So because like book 2 I don't think is in the movie at all. They mention it at the very end of the movie, like let's go to the restaurant, and it's like, well, that was book 2. So
remember that.
So it'll be interesting to see what our discussion is, because like I really do feel like it was very much like a completely different, let's just go over here now.
I feel like it was continuing with the humor, and I guess again it probably is more a hallmark of originally having been on radio, and people like tuning in specifically for a humorous radio, like British amusing like comedy show type thing. It didn't necessarily have like probably more like the Flying Circus, Monty Python type. Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense because it's Monty Python. You just
Well, that was perfect timing right there.
I'm sorry, I dropped my computer.
But it was perfect timing for what you were talking about, being
Yeah, I
humor,
just
Monty Python,
went
like
for a
yeah.
Monty Python humor, threw my computer backwards, and yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed my ceiling. My partner actually redid the ceiling a while ago. Anyway, Tracy didn't feel one way or the other about Zaphod. Yeah, that's fair.
Same.
Well, I feel like it's definitely one of those things where you compare it to the movie, and he is a much better whole-rounded character in the movie because of how much stuff they get. So I do feel like in the book, if you're not comparing him, I don't think you're going to hate him as much.
Yeah.
Like he's not necessarily a nice person, but he's not as hateful as some of the stuff that you know from the movie or like how it translates into the book.
Yeah.
I think I am really interested to see where his story goes because of all the like the memory stuff and what's happening with his brain, or brains plural.
Yeah, plural.
Like
2
I'm
heads,
interested
3
on
arms.
that. Yeah. So
And
like,
why
he's the character that I'm most intrigued about, like I guess plot wise or story wise. But like that's the thing with these characters is like I didn't like connect to any characters, and I think I'm much more I'm a character and plot reader, but I want to like relate to a character. And yes, I related to the depressed robot. I loved that. But like Arthur and Ford, I don't care.
No.
Like
that's because they're stereotypical British men. They're just sort of there.
They're just sort of a canvas for you to paint on. Like they're not. They're just things that things happen to. Like they're not necessarily.
Zaphod has the most like stuff that we don't know about, and seems to have the most possibility for plot stuff right now. So I agree that he's the one that I'm the most curious about.
Like no one feels like a main character.
No.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Yeah, I can definitely see that you would how you would feel that way. Yeah, I have always thought of Arthur as the main character.
No, I think he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But he's but like everything just happens to him. He's along for the ride. He's like the audience insert, not necessarily the in charge of the story.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a like plot. Not even plot, like it's definitely humor. That's the main point of it.
It's passive characters.
Yeah. This is weird because quite a few people are saying that they are more character-driven readers. And I've realized about myself in this last booktube universe that I've lived in for 5 years that I am a writing first and foremost. If it's written well, then I will enjoy it. If it's written badly, I will not like it, even if the characters are fun or whatever. I mean, oftentimes, like if it's written badly, then the characters just aren't written, like nothing's written well. But yeah, and I find that as much as I totally understand where everyone's coming from, in that the characters are like, I mean, Arthur Dent's just a blank slate, and it's all just a vehicle to talk about like what's about the universe and how we think about things. But I like that, and I don't know, probably it's because I grew up, like I said, reading it, kind of, didn't really think about it too hard when I was 15 or whatever. But yeah, I think that Douglas Adams, for what he's doing, is it's very well done, and it's very well written. So I don't mind that the characters aren't as developed as they could be. But then again, I've also read them all, so there's more character development that happens later that I guess having read the stuff later, I can be backwards and be a bit like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see why that or whatever. Anyway, I like the part where it says Trillian struggles to tell between Zaphod pretending to be stupid for various reasons and him actually being stupid. Yes.
Oh, I really loved that quote. because you keep expecting it to be like, or is he pretending to be stupid because he's actually smart, and it's like, or is he just actually stupid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that you spend so much time thinking that, like, you don't ever think about what else he could possibly be doing and why, because you're so focused on what. Yeah, I definitely think Zaphod is probably, at the moment, is probably the character that has the most potential to, like,
Go somewhere.
yeah.
He
Whereas,
seems
like,
to move the plot forward more.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
You got deleted.
That's great.
So Tracy's agreeing with Ren, but I don't remember what Tracy is agreeing with Ren about.
It goes about characters.
Yeah, the characters.
Okay, yep. Yeah, I think I
Like-
think you're right. That the there's nothing
Yeah.
really.
Oh, it's the
like
comment.
you couldn't.
I think.
Yeah, I can read a badly written book if I like the characters. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can do the same. I've
I'm currently
read
doing
books.
that.
I've read some books that like are like the author's first book and like objectively are horribly written, but the
Mm.
characters and plot was really good, and I'm like 5 stars. I loved it.
Tracy's much more of a character-driven reader. My favorite quote was when Ford asks Zaphod if he's crazy, and Zaphod goes on about how it's a possibility he hasn't ruled out yet. Yes, I related too hard.
Had a
Yeah.
couple quotes that were like how his state of mind wasn't like at optimal level, and so like he can only judge himself based on like how he's currently feeling or something like that. Like that's, I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the actual quote, but I loved that a lot. So it's like, how are you, like, where are you? And it's like, well, I can tell you where I am at right now, but I'm not like 100%. And I related to that a lot. Like being able to know that you could be even better later in the future.
Yeah.
And you can only do what you are able to do right then and there. Like,
Yeah.
I really liked that.
Yeah, that's really nice. It kind of makes me feel a bit better sometimes about like, it's okay. This is just a low point. It'll be better.
It'll be better.
It'll be better. I'm also curious about Trillian. Yeah, I really like Trillian.
Same.
I think that is definitely a fun, and particularly given that her and Arthur have met before, I really like the part where he's like, hang on, you left with that guy? And she's like, well, I mean, what could you offer me, really? He could offer me the whole galaxy. Yeah. Also,
She does seem like such a badass.
Yeah. I think that they do more with her character in the movie as well.
They do, or at least from what we've seen in the first book, because again, I feel like she's sort of in the back right now in the first book. Like she's there, but she's not 100% like her own person, like driving anything.
Yeah.
But I do like her character in the movie a lot too.
I also related when Marvin. Told the spaceship about his thoughts and everything, and the spaceship killed itself. Oh no! I have ADHD depressions. People always tell me I talk too much about too deep stuff. Aww.
Yeah.
Oh, Tracy was talking about that.
I read that quote and went, shit, that's dark.
Yeah, I definitely reviewed this book on the Storygraph and was like, do you want to put any content warnings? I was like, yes, there is a mention of suicide.
Yeah.
Totally forgot about that, but it is there.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things again that like is kind of buried a little bit. It's because it's meant to be humorous, and then
it is
like,
meant to be
humorous.
Yeah,
that's actually not like that funny.
Well, and I feel like back in the 80s, that was definitely humorous. Like, I feel like there's a lot more from, and somebody mentioned this before, the humor holds up a lot, like, very well from the 80s to now.
Yeah.
But I think actually my book, or somebody on Goodreads actually says, like, this was first published in 1979. So, like, almost the 80s probably when it gained popularity. But, like, there's a lot of humor now that, like, you look back on and you're just like, was that actually funny?
Yeah.
But a lot of it holds up.
Yeah.
But then you get something like that where you're like, not so much. At least that one.
Yeah, I think it was Abby from, I can't remember the channel name, but Abby Appellanor commented on my TBR, talking about reading it, and was like that it doesn't hold up well, and I can understand why, because there are those things, and then the thing with the whale, and like there's just a lot of stuff that people are a lot more like, not that people weren't sensitive about it in the 80s, but like people are a lot more aware that actually it's not very funny to joke about people killing
Yeah.
themselves.
Same thing going back and watching some 80s movies. You're like, I remember loving this, and then you go back
Yeah.
now as an adult and you're like, was that actually appropriate?
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hang on. I don't think I appreciate what, like, Grease, like everything in at the end of Grease. You're like,
Or some of
yeah,
the John Williams stuff has some scenes and some like what is it? Pretty in Pink, where they have like the underwear in the bathroom, and one of those movies also has an Asian character that his name is like not something that you would actually see as an Asian character, and it was very much like a dick joke. So,
yeah,
those kind of things.
yeah, and it's kind of like, it's all very well to be like, oh, well, that was the 80s, but I think it is worthwhile kind of like acknowledging that that's actually, just because it was the 80s doesn't mean that it was ever okay. It's just that we've become a lot more like aware of it, and a lot more maybe not everybody, but
A lot of people
like to think that more people are conscious of how they express themselves. And
but again, for that being said, I actually do think it held up pretty well, at least in this first book. We'll see some more. Like, there was not as much cringy humor as like the absurdity and it working. So
yeah, definitely. So I feel like we've come to a kind of a natural conclusion. The only thing we have left to do really is to figure out when to do our next live show for Restaurant. So we did say that the last weekend of each month. So the last weekend of February is the 24th, 25th. So far, I am free both of those days.
So far.
So I think that Ashley might have been.
I think she was volunteering to do it.
Yeah,
I think she was as well.
Yeah.
She wasn't able to be here today.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to figure out an actual time maybe once we can talk to her about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's leave it then as, like we said, it'll be
25th maybe.
24th, 25th. And we will put up in the Discord when that will be, and I'll pop it in my community tab as well if people want to do that as well. But cool. So we'll let you know. But it'll be one of those days, and we'll try and make it as like potential everyone. We will try and make it a time when lots of people can join. But obviously, it's a bit like more difficult. It's a bit difficult. Yeah.
Always. Time zones make everything so much harder. Especially when it's me being on the complete opposite side of the world. And then she's in the middle.
Yeah. When it's Australia, the States, and the UK is when it gets the most tricky.
It is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When it said men were real men, women were real women, and furry creatures from X planet are real furry. Yeah. I laughed at that one. It's the kind of thing, I think, where it's like, it's a bit tricky with that kind of humor, because on the one hand you can say, well, that's not okay, because, obviously, like, there's a range of sexualities and so on, and I hope you all know what I'm trying to say. Genders and gender fluidity and everything. But like, not that Douglas Adams was probably fully trying to say that, but I think that that's the joke, is that he's trying to point out that that's not.
Well, no, I agree with you. I think he is trying to say that it's not men are men, women are women, because then they also pull in the furry creatures from X Planet are furry creatures, and it's trying to show the absurdity of saying
that men
have
are
to be a man,
or
you have to be a woman. That's how I took it, but I agree that some people might not see it that way. But that's how I saw it.
I think that's part of the difficulty as well, is because it's the way that he's expressing it, like you said, is that you could very easily take it that he was being very transphobic or very, but I think he's not. I think he's doing the opposite. But at the, like in the 70s, I mean, he was writing in the 70s.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a thing that was talked about. So he doesn't necessarily have the language.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that, I mean, like, you can totally.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No, that's, yeah.
One of the people who say that. Yeah, I think that's the
that was
thing,
my
though.
interpretation as well.
That's my interpretation as well. But I think that's the thing, is that because of the way it's written, it's you could go either way. You could be like me and be like, well, I like Douglas Adams, so I think he did this. Or you could be like, well, that's not what he said, though.
Well, it's very hard when you have authors who have passed away.
Well,
because
yeah.
it's the same sort of thing that I've been seeing lately with like people with like Good Omens and like Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman stuff. People are like, well, Terry Pratchett would never say this, or he would always say this. And then you, at least for that, you do have his daughter who like owns his estate and is able to say, well, my dad would never have said that you can't be gay or whatever it is. Then you also have like Neil Gaiman, who specifically said, well, I planned out Good Omens with him. It was always supposed to be a love story, and we just never got to tell the sequel because he died. So it's hard when you have those authors who, at least like Douglas Adams, like we don't really have people that are constantly telling about him now. And I'm just happy that we have that with Terry Pratchett, because like there are people that try and bring in certain things from Discworld or whatever, and they try and make it transphobic or homophobic or whatever it is, and like you at least have people that knew him in real life and knew the stories he was trying to tell that were able to debunk it. And so this one's a little bit harder just because of the fact that like we don't really have that.
We don't have his perspective on it.
At
least anymore, like out of his mouth. And especially with books that came out in the 70s or 80s, like I didn't personally know that like trans was a thing until like after high school, because like one of my best friends in high school eventually came out as trans afterwards, but like even she didn't know back then that that's what she was, you know what I mean? Like it was just it wasn't a thing that you ever heard about. Like so like now that we have the language for it, I feel like it's a little easier to see that kind of stuff too. So I interpreted it as he thinks it's stupid that people say certain things like that.
But I agree, but I can also see how people would
I'm sure there are people
the other way, because
I'm sure there are,
yes. And that's fair enough. Like everyone interprets things in different ways. It's not like we can all be like, like we can't all be like, well, you can't think that because obviously, like you said, obviously Douglas Adams, well, we don't actually know. First of all. But so is everyone happy with everything we talked about? So we will let you know when the next live will be. It'll probably be on Ashley's channel, but we will confirm that again in the Discord. And thank you everyone so much for joining, and thank you my amazing co-host for co-hosting with me. And thanks for the discussion. It's been a really good discussion. And like with anything, I hope that what we've said has been like that, particularly the last little bit of conversation that we're having. Like I hope that we've been as respectful as we can be, and I hope that if there's I don't know if I'm making sense. Sorry.
If you have any commentary about that, you can always let us know. We are always here to learn, especially since I know I talked a lot. If there's anything that anybody wants to say to me, I am open for discussion.
Thank you, Chelsea. That's what I was trying to say. I just wasn't saying it very well, but thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Yes. Can't wait for the next one. Thanks for hosting the Readalong this live. You're welcome. All right. I guess we're going to go now, and we'll talk to you all in the Discord.
Yes.
Bye.